The rain came down in sheets that Thursday night, turning Main Street in Ashford, Tennessee into a river of neon reflections. The Redbird Diner's sign buzzed and flickered, casting red light across the wet pavement. Inside, Maya Torres wiped down the counter for the third time in an hour, watching the clock creep toward 11. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers, and she kept one eye on her phone, waiting for the babysitter's usual check-in text about Emma. The bell above the door chimed. A man stumbled in, soaked to the bone, his leather vest dripping water onto the checkered floor. He was older, maybe 50, with iron-gray hair plastered to his skull and a face lined by sun and wind. The patch on his vest read Iron Cross MC above a skull with wings. Maya had seen bikers come through before. Most were polite. Some tipped well. This one looked embarrassed. "Sorry about the mess," he said, his voice rough. "My bike died half a mile back. Pushed her most of the way here." He gestured toward the window. Outside, barely visible through the downpour, a massive Harley sat at the curb, rain hammering its chrome. "Phone's dead, too. Could I borrow yours to call my road brothers?" Maya glanced at Lou, the owner, who was doing end-of-night counts in the back. Lou gave a small nod. She slid her phone across the counter. "Go ahead." "Coffee's fresh if you want some." The man's face softened. "Appreciate it." He made the call, short and efficient, then set the phone down. "They're 40 minutes out. I can wait outside if it's a problem." "Sit," Maya said, pouring him coffee without asking. "You'll catch pneumonia." They didn't talk much. Maya moved between tables, refilling salt shakers and folding napkins. The man sipped his coffee and stared out at the rain. When Lou came out front with the night's deposit bag, he looked at the biker, then at Maya, and said nothing. The man left a $10 bill under his saucer for a $3 cup of coffee. At 11:15, Maya clocked out. She pulled on her thin jacket and stepped into the rain, keys in hand. Her car, a battered Toyota with a missing hubcap, sat at the far end of the lot. She was halfway there when she noticed the biker still standing beside his bike, trying to shield his phone from the rain with his body. 2 other bikes had pulled up, their riders huddled with him, arguing about a tow. Maya stopped. Her shift was over. Emma was waiting. The babysitter charged by the hour, but the rain was getting worse, and the nearest garage was 5 miles out. She walked over. "You need a push to the gas station?" she called over the storm. "It's just 2 blocks." The 3 men turned. The one from the diner studied her. "That's a kind offer, ma'am, but this girl weighs 600 pounds. We got it." Maya looked at the bike, then at the flooding street. 4 people push faster than 3. I've got 10 minutes. Something passed between the men, a look she couldn't quite read. Then the biker from the diner nodded. "Iron Horse," he said, offering his hand. "Frank Coleman." "Maya Torres." They pushed. Maya put her shoulder into the bike's frame, her sneakers sliding on the slick pavement. The rain soaked through her jacket in seconds. Iron Horse steered, his 2 brothers flanking the rear. They made it to the gas station in 8 minutes, rolling the Harley under the overhang. Maya's arms burned. Her hair hung in wet ropes. Iron Horse's friends pulled out their wallets, but she waved them off. "Just get home safe," she said, already turning toward her car. "Wait." Iron Horse reached into his vest and pulled out a soggy business card. It wasn't a business card, she realized. It was a card from the Redbird Diner, the kind Lou left on tables with the check. On the back, Iron Horse had written something in pen, smudged now by rain. He pressed it into her hand. "You ever need anything? I mean that." Maya didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and jogged back to her car. She drove the 12 minutes to her apartment complex, Valley View, which had never had a view and wasn't much of a valley. The second-floor walkway was slick. She knocked quietly on Mrs. Park's door, paid the babysitter, and carried sleeping Emma back to their own unit. The eviction notice was still taped to the door, orange and official. 72 hours to pay $1,840 in back rent or vacate. Maya peeled it off, crumpled it in her fist, and unlocked the door. Emma stirred in her arms. "Mama?" "Shh, baby." "We're home." Inside, the apartment was small and cold. Maya laid Emma in bed, tucked the blanket around her, and checked the inhaler on the nightstand. She uncrumpled the eviction notice and spread it flat on the kitchen table beside a stack of medical bills. Then she pulled out the soggy diner card. Iron Horse's handwriting was barely legible, but she could make out a phone number and 4 words, Good people deserve good. She set it on the table, turned off the light, and lay down on the couch. Outside, the rain hammered the roof. Somewhere in the night, the low rumble of engines faded into the distance, heading south. Maya closed her eyes. Tomorrow she'd call the landlord again. Tomorrow she'd figure something out. She always did. But tonight she was just tired and wet and trying very hard not to cry. The card sat on the table in the dark, a small white square next to the orange eviction notice, like a truce flag no one would see. Friday morning came too soon. Maya's alarm went off at 6, and she dragged herself up from the couch. Her shoulders still ached from pushing the bike. Emma was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her coloring book. The girl's breathing had that faint wheeze that meant her inhaler was running low. "Morning, baby," Maya said, forcing brightness into her voice. "Cereal or toast?" "Toast with the strawberry jam," Emma said, not looking up from her drawing. It was a picture of a castle with a princess in the window. No prince, Maya noticed. Just the princess, waiting. Maya made breakfast and checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Dennis Kowalski, the property manager. No voicemails. She knew what he wanted. The same thing he'd wanted all month. Her gone. Valley View was being sold to a developer, and empty units meant easier demolition. Dennis got a bonus for every tenant who left before the sale closed. She walked Emma to the bus stop, kissed her forehead, and watched the yellow bus disappear around the corner. Then she drove to the apartment office. Dennis was at his desk, eating a breakfast sandwich and scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up when she came in. "I need an extension," Maya said. 2 weeks. I'm picking up extra shifts." Dennis finally looked at her. He had the kind of face that smiled easily, but never with his eyes. "Mrs. Torres, we've been over this. You're 60 days behind. The notice is final." "Ms. Torres," Maya corrected quietly, "and I can pay half today, the rest by the 15th. "Not good enough." He turned back to his phone. "You've got until Monday morning. After that, I file with the court." Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. "My daughter has asthma. Yeah, she can't sleep in a car." "Then I suggest you contact family or social services." He said it like he was recommending a restaurant. "There are resources." Maya stood there for a moment longer, waiting for him to look at her again. He didn't. She turned and walked out. In her car, she sat with her hands on the steering wheel and tried to think. Her mother was in Arizona with a new husband who didn't like complications. Her sister was overseas with the military. The churches had rent assistance funds, but they'd been tapped out since summer. She'd already asked. She drove to the Redbird for the day shift. Lou was in the kitchen prepping for lunch. Maya tied on her apron and started setting tables. The morning regulars came and went. Coffee and eggs, biscuits and gravy, tips in 1s and 5s that she folded into her pocket like prayers. Around 10, Pastor Ruth Hendricks came in, her silver hair pinned back, her face kind and tired. She slid into the corner booth and ordered decaf. Maya brought it over and sat down without asking. Ruth was one of the few people in town who wouldn't mind. "I saw the notice on your door last night," Ruth said gently. "I was dropping off groceries for Mrs. Park." Maya nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. "The benevolence fund is empty until January," Ruth continued. "But I made some calls this morning. St. Mark's in Clarksville has a family shelter. It's not ideal, but—" "Emma can't share a room with strangers," Maya interrupted, her voice tight. "She has nightmares, and her inhaler, if someone smokes or there's mold—" Ruth reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I know. I'm still calling people. Someone will have something." But Maya had heard that before. Someone will have something. Somehow it'll work out. God provides. She believed in God, mostly, but she also believed in eviction courts and empty bank accounts and medical bills that didn't care how hard you prayed. She finished her shift at 3 and picked Emma up from school. They went to the library because it was warm and free. Emma did her homework at a table near the window, while Maya filled out job applications on the public computer. Grocery store, gas station, overnight warehouse. Anything that paid more than the diner. Anything that didn't require childcare she couldn't afford. At 5, they went home. The eviction notice was gone from the door, but a new one had been slipped under it. This one was on legal letterhead. Court date, Wednesday. Maya folded it and put it in the drawer with the others. She made spaghetti for dinner, the cheap kind with jarred sauce. Emma ate half and pushed the rest around her plate. Mama, why did that man tape the paper to our door? Just grown-up stuff, baby. Nothing to worry about. Are we moving? Maya looked at her daughter's face, small and serious, and felt something crack inside her chest. I don't know yet. That night, after Emma was asleep, Maya sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a notepad. She added up her tips, her last paycheck, the $16 in her checking account. No matter how she arranged the numbers, they didn't reach $1,840. She thought about the card Iron Horse had given her. Good people deserve good. It was a nice thought, but nice thoughts didn't pay rent. She almost threw the card away, but something stopped her. Maybe it was pride, not wanting to prove Dennis right that she had no one. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the memory of 3 men in the rain who'd let her help without making her feel small. She picked up her phone and typed in the number. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Then she set the phone down. What would she even say? Hi, remember me? I pushed your bike 2 blocks and now I need $2,000? It was absurd. She put the card back on the table and went to lie down on the couch. Sleep didn't come. She stared at the ceiling and listened to Emma's breathing through the open bedroom door, that faint wheeze that meant the inhaler was almost gone. She'd have to choose soon, refill the prescription or pay part of the rent. There was no option that covered both. At some point, she must have dozed off, because she woke to her phone buzzing. The screen read, 6:47 a.m., Saturday. Unknown number. She answered, her voice thick with sleep. Miss Torres? The voice was unfamiliar, younger than Iron Horse. My name's Polly. I ride with the Iron Cross. Frank Coleman asked me to check on you. He said you helped him out the other night. Maya sat up, confused. Yes, I pushed his bike. It was nothing. It wasn't nothing to Frank. A pause. Look, I know this might sound strange, but Frank's got a sense about people. He wanted me to ask, you doing all right? You need anything? Maya's throat tightened. She looked at the eviction notice on the table, at the medical bills, at the empty walls of the apartment that wasn't really hers anymore. She thought about saying, I'm fine, the way she always did, but her mouth betrayed her. I'm about to lose my home, she whispered. Polly was quiet for a moment. Then, tell me what you need. By noon on Saturday, Maya had told the story 3 times, once to Polly on the phone, once to Frank Coleman himself, who'd called back an hour later with questions about the amount and the deadline, and once to Pastor Ruth, who'd shown up at Maya's door with a casserole and a look that said she already knew. I didn't ask them for money, Maya said, sitting at her kitchen table while Emma watched cartoons in the next room. He asked if I needed anything, and I was tired, and it just came out. Ruth smiled. Sometimes that's when the truth comes easiest. But I don't even know these people. What if they think I'm scamming them? Frank Coleman has been riding through Ashford for 20 years, Ruth said. He and his brothers stopped a robbery at the Quick Mart back in 2019. Held the man down until the sheriff arrived. They're not the kind of people who get scammed easily. She paused. And they're not the kind who forget a kindness either. Maya wanted to believe that, but hope felt dangerous. She'd learned not to lean on it too hard. At 2 o'clock, her phone rang again. Frank Coleman. Ms. Torres, I'm at the Redbird with a few of my brothers. You got time to come down? I'd like to talk face to face. Maya's hands went cold. Is something wrong? No, ma'am. Opposite, actually. Just want to make sure we do this right. She called Mrs. Park to watch Emma and drove to the diner. Lou's parking lot held 6 motorcycles, all Harleys, all gleaming despite the gray sky. Inside, Frank sat in the corner booth with 5 other men. They ranged in age from 30s to 60s, all wearing the Iron Cross vest. When Maya walked in, they stood. It caught her off guard. Frank gestured to the seat across from him. Thanks for coming. This is Polly, Marcus, Deke, Stitch, and Bones, my road brothers. Each man nodded as his name was called. They didn't smile exactly, but their faces weren't hard. Just careful, respectful. Maya sat. Lou brought her coffee without being asked. Frank leaned forward, his forearms on the table. I'm not good with fancy words, so I'll just say it straight. You helped me when you didn't have to. In the rain, after a long shift, when most people would have driven past. He paused. I called my chapter. We took a vote. We want to cover your rent. Maya blinked. The words didn't seem real. What? The full amount, Polly added, and the late fees. We'll pay it Monday morning so you're clear with the landlord. I can't accept that, Maya said automatically. It's too much. It's not, Frank said. His voice was firm but not unkind. We've all been down. We've all had people turn their backs when we needed help. You didn't do that. You saw a man in trouble and you stopped. He reached into his vest and pulled out a worn photograph, creased and faded. A teenage girl with dark hair and Frank's eyes. That's my daughter, Lily. Haven't seen her in 11 years. Made some mistakes when she was young. Chose the road over being a father. He tucked the photo away. I can't fix that, but I can make sure another little girl doesn't lose her home because her mom is too proud to ask for help. Maya's eyes stung. She looked down at her coffee. Why are you doing this? Because you pushed a bike in the rain, Marcus said. He was the youngest, maybe 35, with a scar across his jaw. Because you didn't ask what we were or where we'd been. You just helped. There's more, Frank said. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and slid it across the table. I made some calls. Turns out your landlord's been pulling the same game on half the building, pressuring tenants to leave so his developer can claim the place is vacant. It's legal, barely, but it's dirty. He tapped the paper. That's the number for a tenants' rights lawyer in Nashville. She works pro bono. Already talked to her. She's willing to take your case if you want to file a complaint. Maya unfolded the paper. The lawyer's name was Sarah Chen. There was a phone number and a note in Frank's handwriting. Call Monday. She's expecting you. I don't understand, Maya said. You don't even know me. Frank looked at her for a long moment. I know you stopped. That's enough. The men stood to leave. Frank laid a hand briefly on her shoulder. We'll be back Monday morning, 9 a.m. We're going to pay your rent in person. If that landlord gives you trouble, he'll have to go through 200 of us. 200? Polly grinned. It was the first smile she'd seen from any of them. Word travels fast in the writing community. Frank put out the call last night. Iron Cross chapters from 3 states are coming in. Memphis, Knoxville, Little Rock. Some independent writers, too. Anybody who's ever been helped by a stranger. He paused. Anybody who remembers what it's like to be out in the rain? Maya couldn't speak. Frank nodded once, then led his brothers out. The door chimed. The engine started, a deep rumble that vibrated the windows, and then they were gone. Lou came over and sat down across from her. You okay, hun? Maya shook her head, then nodded, then shook her head again. I don't know what just happened. Grace, Lou said simply. That's what happened. Maya drove home in a daze. Emma was on the couch with Mrs. Park, watching a nature documentary about elephants. She looked up when Maya came in. Mama, did you know elephants never forget? Maya knelt down and pulled her daughter into a hug. Yeah, baby, I've heard that. That night she called Pastor Ruth and told her everything. Ruth laughed, a sound like wind chimes. I knew Frank would do something. I just didn't think it'd be this big. What if it doesn't work? Maya asked. What if Dennis still makes us leave? Then you fight, Ruth said. With 200 bikers and a lawyer and a whole town that's been watching that man squeeze people dry for months. You fight. And this time, you're not alone. Sunday morning, Maya didn't go to church. She cleaned the apartment instead, scrubbing floors and washing windows and folding every piece of laundry they owned. Emma helped, dusting the baseboards with a sock on her hand. They didn't talk about Monday. They just worked together, making the small space as clean and bright as it could be. At dusk, Maya stood on the walkway outside her door and looked out over the parking lot. The sky was orange and purple, the air cool. Somewhere to the south, engines were rumbling. Somewhere, people were packing saddlebags and checking tire pressure and filling gas tanks. Somewhere, a convoy was forming. And for the first time in months, Maya let herself hope. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Maya woke before her alarm, dressed Emma in her favorite sweater, and made pancakes for breakfast. Emma chattered about a book report due Friday, about a boy at school who'd shared his crayons, about the elephant documentary and how the herds protect their young. Maya listened and nodded and poured syrup, her hand steady even though her heart was racing. At 8:30, she heard it, a low rumble in the distance growing louder. Emma ran to the window. Mama, what's that sound? Maya joined her. From their second-floor view, she could see Main Street and what was coming up. Main Street made her breath catch. Motorcycles, dozens of them, maybe more. They rolled into the Valley View parking lot in formation, 2 by 2, engines thundering like a summer storm. They kept coming. Harleys and Indians and Triumphs, ridden by men and women in leather vests, some with gray beards, some with tattooed arms, some looking like accountants who'd swapped their ties for the open road. They filled the lot. Then they filled the street. Then they lined up along the curb and the grass and every available inch of pavement. 200 bikes, maybe more. All idling, all waiting. Frank Coleman dismounted near the front and looked up at Maya's window. He touched 2 fingers to his forehead in a small salute. Maya grabbed her keys. "Come on, baby." "Stay close to Mama." They walked down the stairs together. The other tenants were emerging now, drawn by the noise. Old Mr. Harrigan from 3B, the Flores family with their twin toddlers, Mrs. Park clutching her bathrobe closed. They stood on the walkways and stared. Dennis Kowalski came out of the office, his face pale. He looked at the sea of motorcycles and the riders standing beside them, arms crossed, silent. He looked at Maya. "What the hell is this?" he said, his voice thin. Frank stepped forward. "We're here to pay Ms. Torres's rent. In full. Cash." Dennis's mouth opened and closed. "You can't just... There's a process." "The process is, you take the money and mark her account current," Frank said calmly. He pulled an envelope from his vest, thick with bills. $1,840, plus $200 for the late fees you tacked on without proper notice, plus another $500 for next month, in advance. He held out the envelope. "You want to count it?" Dennis didn't take it. His eyes darted to the crowd of riders, then to the tenants watching from their doorways. "This doesn't change anything. The building's being sold. She'll have to leave eventually." "Actually, no." A woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was in her 40s, wearing jeans and a blazer over her riding leathers, her black hair pulled back in a braid. "I'm Sarah Chen, tenant rights attorney." "You've been served." She handed Dennis a folder. "That's a formal complaint on behalf of Ms. Torres and 5 other tenants in this complex. You've been engaging in constructive eviction, Mr. Kowalski. Harassment, improper notices, failure to maintain habitable conditions, and intimidation tactics designed to force residents out before the sale." Dennis's face went red. I have every right to..." "You have the right to remain silent," said a new voice. Sheriff Bobby Crane stepped through the crowd, his uniform crisp, his expression tired. He'd been sheriff for 15 years and had the look of a man who'd seen this kind of thing too many times. "I've been getting complaints about you for 2 months, Dennis. Just didn't have enough to act on until Ms. Chen here compiled the evidence." He nodded at Sarah. "Now I do." Dennis looked around wildly. The tenants were moving closer now, emboldened. Mr. Harrigan spoke up, his voice shaking but clear. "He told me the heat was broken and wouldn't fix it. Said if I didn't like it, I could leave." Mrs. Flores stepped forward. "He kept our security deposit for damages that were already there when we moved in." One by one they spoke. Small grievances that added up. A pattern of cruelty disguised as business. Dennis's shoulders sagged. He took the envelope from Frank's hand. "Fine. I'll mark her account current." "And?" Frank's voice was steel. "And I'll stop the eviction proceedings." "And?" This time it was Sarah. Dennis glanced at the sheriff. "And I'll be in your office tomorrow to answer questions about the other complaints." Sheriff Crane nodded. 9 a.m. Don't be late." Dennis turned and walked back into the office, the folder and envelope clutched in his hands. The door closed behind him with a soft click. For a moment, no one moved. Then Emma tugged on Maya's hand. "Mama, did we win?" Maya looked down at her daughter, at her wide brown eyes and the gap where her front tooth was growing in. She looked at Frank Coleman and his brothers, at the 200 riders who'd come from 3 states because a stranger had stopped in the rain. She looked at Pastor Ruth, who'd appeared from somewhere in the crowd, smiling with tears on her cheeks. She looked at her neighbors, standing a little taller now, a little less afraid. "Yeah, baby," Maya whispered. "We won." The parking lot erupted, not in cheers exactly. Bikers weren't the cheering type, but in nods and smiles and the sound of engines revving in solidarity. Someone started clapping, and it spread. The tenants clapped, the bikers clapped, even Sheriff Crane. Tough old Bobby Crane, who never showed emotion, clapped twice before clearing his throat and walking back to his cruiser. Frank knelt down so he was eye level with Emma. "You've got a brave mama," he said. "You take care of her, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a drawing, folded into a small square. She'd made it that morning while Maya cooked pancakes. It showed a castle and a princess in the window, but this time there were knights on motorcycles surrounding the tower. She handed it to Frank. "For helping us," she said. Frank unfolded it carefully, his jaw tightened. He looked at Maya, then back at Emma, and for a moment it seemed like he might say something. Instead, he just folded the drawing even more carefully and tucked it into his vest, right next to the photo of his daughter. "I'll keep it safe," he said. The crowd began to disperse. Riders started their engines and pulled out in the same formation they'd arrived in, 2 by 2, a disciplined exodus. Some waved, some just nodded. A few stopped to shake Maya's hand or hug Pastor Ruth or clap Mr. Harrigan on the shoulder. Frank was one of the last to leave. He handed Maya a card, different from the first one. This one had the Iron Cross logo and a phone number. "That's our chapter house. You ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call. Someone will answer." "I don't know how to thank you," Maya said. "You already did," Frank replied, 2 nights ago, in the rain. He paused. "You know what the hardest part of the road is? It's not the distance, it's the loneliness. Feeling like nobody sees you, nobody cares if you make it home." He looked at the drawing Emma had given him, visible through the clear pocket of his vest. "You saw me. That's worth more than you know." He mounted his bike, kicked it to life, and rolled out of the parking lot. The rumble faded slowly, heading south toward Memphis, toward home. Maya stood in the parking lot with Emma's hand in hers, watching until the last bike disappeared around the corner. Then she turned and looked up at their apartment. The window was open. The curtains moved in the breeze. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a leaky faucet she'd learned to fix herself. But it was hers, at least for now, at least for long enough to figure out what came next. She squeezed Emma's hand. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the parking lot of the First Baptist Church on a Saturday morning, watching the Iron Cross MC roll in for their monthly charity ride. They'd invited her and Emma to join them for the kickoff, not to ride, just to see them off. It had become a tradition, Frank explained. Every ride started with a moment of remembrance for the people they'd helped and the people who'd helped them. Emma sat on the church steps with a coloring book, her inhaler tucked safely in Maya's purse. The prescription was refilled now, paid for by a small fund the bikers had set up. Not a charity, Frank insisted, just a community pot for emergencies. Maya had tried to refuse it, but Polly had pointed out that she'd helped them first, so really, they were just keeping the balance even. The math didn't work that way, Maya knew. But she'd learned not to argue with bikers about kindness. They took it as seriously as they took their machines. Dennis Kowalski was gone. He'd resigned the day after the sheriff questioned him, and the property management company had sent a formal apology letter to every tenant. The building sale was still happening, but the new owners had agreed to honor all existing leases and bring the units up to code before raising rent. Sarah Chen had made sure of that. Maya still worked at the Redbird, but she'd picked up 2 freelance bookkeeping clients on the side, work she could do at home after Emma went to bed. Lou had recommended her to another diner owner in Clarksville, and that owner had recommended her to a small accounting firm. It wasn't much yet, but it was a start. Pastor Ruth had started a tenants union at Valley View. They met every other Wednesday in the church basement. Mr. Harrigan was the treasurer. Mrs. Flores was the secretary. Maya was just a member, but she showed up, and she listened, and she learned that she wasn't the only one who'd been scared for a long time. Frank walked over now, his boots crunching on the gravel. He held 2 foam cups of coffee from Lou's diner. He handed one to Maya. "How's the kid?" he asked, nodding toward Emma. "Good. She made honor roll last week." Frank smiled. It softened his whole face. Smart girl. "Takes after her mama," Polly called from across the lot. He was checking the air in his tires, but he was grinning. Maya blushed. "She gets it from her grandma, actually. Math whiz." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping coffee. The other riders were gathering, checking gear, talking in low voices. A few had brought their wives or girlfriends. One man had his teenage son on the back of his bike. the kid's face bright with pride. "I've been thinking," Maya said, "about what you said, that you can't fix what happened with your daughter." Frank's expression closed off, just a little. "Yeah, you can't," Maya agreed, "but you helped me and Emma, and the Flores family, and Mr. Harrigan." She paused. "Maybe that doesn't make up for it, but it counts for something." Frank looked down at his coffee. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Lily would be 32 now. I don't even know if she's married, if she's got kids, if she's happy." He cleared his throat. "But when Emma gave me that drawing, I thought, maybe Lily would have done the same thing, at that age. Maybe she's raising a little girl somewhere who draws pictures for strangers." "Maybe," Maya said gently, "and maybe someday she'll hear about what you did here. People talk, stories travel." "Maybe." Frank didn't sound convinced, but he tucked the photo of Lily a little deeper into his vest, like he was protecting it, or protecting himself. The ride captain called out, and the engines started. Frank drained his coffee and crushed the cup. "We're headed to St. Jude's today. Christmas toy drive." He glanced at Emma. "Your girl like bikes?" "She's terrified of them," Maya admitted, "but she likes the people who ride them." Frank laughed, a real laugh, deep and surprised. "That'll do." He mounted his bike and fell into formation. 2 by 2, the riders pulled out of the church parking lot, turning left onto Main Street. The sound rolled through town like thunder, shaking windows and stopping conversations. People came out of the diner and the hardware store and the Quick Mart to watch them pass. Some waved, some just stared. Maya lifted Emma onto her hip, even though the girl was getting too big for it, and watched the procession. At the rear of the formation, a new rider brought up the tail. Younger woman, maybe 25, her vest still stiff and new. She saw Maya watching and threw a small salute, 2 fingers to her forehead, the same way Frank had done weeks ago. Maya returned it. The bikes disappeared around the bend, heading toward the highway, toward the children's hospital, toward the next person who needed help. The sound faded slowly, like a hymn trailing off at the end of a service. Emma rested her head on Maya's shoulder. "Mama, why did all those people come to help us?" Maya thought about it. She thought about rain and broken bikes and eviction notices. She thought about kindness that didn't ask for a reason, and help that didn't require you to deserve it. She thought about the way the world could surprise you if you let it, if you stopped long enough in the rain to push. "Because somebody has to," she said finally, "and it might as well be us." They walked back to the car, hand in hand. The eviction notice was long gone. The medical bills were manageable. The rent was paid through December. Emma's inhaler was full. Tomorrow Maya would go to work and then come home and tuck her daughter into bed, and maybe, just maybe, sleep without the weight of fear pressing on her chest. Tonight, though, she'd make spaghetti again, the good kind this time, with meat sauce and garlic bread, and she'd tell Emma a story about knights on motorcycles and castles that couldn't fall because the people inside them refused to give up. The sun was high and warm, the sky was clear. Somewhere south of town, 200 engines were singing, and in the window of a small apartment on the second floor of Valley View, a drawing hung taped to the glass, a castle and a princess, and an army of chrome and leather holding the line. Maya looked up at it as she buckled Emma into the car. She'd asked Emma why she'd drawn it that way, why the knights had motorcycles instead of horses. Emma had shrugged, the way 8-year-olds do when the answer is obvious. "Because that's what really happened, Mama." And she was right. The drawing stayed in Frank's vest for 3 years, traveling across 12 states and 40,000 miles. When Lily Coleman finally reached out to her father in the spring of 2028, asking if they could meet, he brought it with him to the coffee shop in Tucson, where she'd asked him to come. He didn't show it to her that first meeting, but later, when they started talking every Sunday, when she invited him to her daughter's 4th birthday party, when she told him she'd forgiven him a long time ago, but needed him to forgive himself, that's when he unfolded the drawing and told her the story. Maya Torres finished her bookkeeping certificate online and started her own small firm. She never got rich, but she never missed rent again either. Emma grew up healthy and became a social worker, specializing in housing advocacy. She kept a photo of the 200 bikes in her office. Valley View Apartments was renovated, not demolished. The tenants union made sure of that. Dennis Kowalski never worked in property management again. And every October, on the anniversary of the rainstorm, The Iron Cross MC holds a ride through Ashford. They stop at the Redbird Diner for coffee. They stop at Valley View to check on the tenants. And they stop at the church, where Pastor Ruth reads the names of people who were helped that year. The list gets longer every time. Because somebody has to, and it might as well be them.